Hello everyone, I'm Helen McVeigh and I teach Ancient Greek. I am the coordinator of the Belfast Summer School in Latin and Classical Greek and the chair of the Classical Association in Northern Ireland. My story is that in December 2019, I left my teaching assistant job to concentrate on tutoring full-time. Teaching Ancient Greek had been a secondary job for a number of years, but it had become more than just a sideline, and the time had come to take the leap. Just 2 months later, the pandemic was declared, and I remember discussing the ancient Greek origins of the word pandemic with one of my classes. In March 2020, Northern Ireland went into its first lockdown. Schools were closed, and we were told to work from home. At this time, I was teaching group classes twice a week and meeting individual students for one-to-one lessons, in addition to a few online one-to-one classes. Thankfully, all my in-person students were able to move online. The 2020 Belfast Summer School had already been advertised, and marketing was in full swing. Over the previous 4 years, the summer school had been growing in popularity. Starting in 2015 with 11 students learning classical Greek for 5 days in a church hall, by 2019 the number of participants had grown to 35, and we met at Queen's University for 2 weeks. Students and tutors alike enjoyed a social evening and an afternoon outing to the Thermopylae Gardens near Hillsborough in County Down, and both I and the rest of the staff were excited and delighted by the summer school's success. In March 2020, we still thought that we might be able to meet in person at Queen's. But as March became April and April moved into May, local lockdowns were extended, and news bulletins from around the world reported grim statistics about the spread of the virus. With regret, the summer school was cancelled. Occasionally during April and May, I considered the logistics of running a summer school online, but it just seemed far too complicated, and besides, who would be interested in it? But then during a chance conversation with a student, she asked, "Wouldn't you think about running something online in the summer?" So I put together a program for a much scaled down virtual summer school, 1 week long, offering beginners, intermediate and advanced Latin and Greek. And I advertised this on the usual channels, social media and email lists. A week later and some of the classes were already full. I was overwhelmed by the response. And so much so, we extended the summer school to accommodate the overspill of students. Every year, when bookings have opened for the face-to-face summer school in Belfast, it's been a waiting and hoping game. Waiting for registrations and hoping there will be enough students who either live locally or are willing to travel to Belfast. Now though, location was and is no longer a barrier to attending the summer school, and in 2020 students joined from Ireland, the UK, Northern Europe, Turkey, USA, Canada and Mexico. There were 118 enrolments in total, 57 in Latin and 61 in Greek. At the request of students, the summer school has also been holding a winter refresher day in January, and we proceeded with this online in 2021, again with an excellent response, 19 students taking Latin and 27 taking Greek. I mention the winter refresher day in particular because I was thrilled to have a student from Australia in my class. How did this work with the time difference, you might ask? Well, she turned out to be rather a night owl. It was 8:30 p.m. in Adelaide and 10 a.m. in the UK. And while she was sipping her wine in 40-degree heat, the rest of us were discussing how much snow had fallen overnight. But what is the difference between teaching in person and teaching online? Well, I find there is very little difference in the actual teaching. Tutors and students have a copy of the textbook. I have a smart pen and notebook which I use to replace a whiteboard. Whatever I write in the smart notebook appears on the screen, and following the lesson, I can save the notes and send them to the students. Of course, there is nothing better than sitting around a table with a group of like-minded learners, and it is impossible to replicate that social aspect on Zoom or other online platforms. I am thrilled, though, that teaching online has become the norm. Northern Ireland is a very small place, and one that for historical reasons tourists perhaps hesitated to visit. But now in the 21st century, the internet has put paid to the obstacles of location which might have prevented students from attending before. When I introduced myself at the beginning of this talk, I said I teach ancient Greek. It feels rather like admitting a secret, and I've become accustomed to the glazed eyes and the bored expressions when explaining how much I enjoy my subject. I know that I can be rather overenthusiastic, and I do realise that not everyone shares my passion. Now, though, I have met, albeit virtually, many students who share my enthusiasm and are keen to learn ancient Greek and Latin. So, who are they? Well, business coaches talk about the ideal client avatar and the importance of knowing your ideal client, right down to what they might watch on TV and where they do their shopping. But when it comes to students of the ancient world, I have found that this ideal client avatar goes out the window. A quick glance at a list of students who have attended the summer school or my weekly group classes reveals a most remarkable variety of people who love learning Latin and Greek. My tutors and I teach high school students, GCSE or potential GCSE candidates, university students and those preparing for university, and then leisure classes, those who learn for fun. So the students who attend leisure classes, that is, classes with no assessment, encompass all kinds of adult learners. For example, those with a general interest in the ancient world, which might bear no commonality with their professions, or parents wanting to help their children with Latin, or more specifically, teachers who are keen to introduce the languages into their school. And speaking of teachers, I'd like to congratulate one of our students, Lawrence McNally, who has been awarded the Classical Association Prize for Outstanding New Teacher. Retired students then include a GP, a consultant physician, a social worker, teachers, classics teachers, maths teachers, a firefighter, and an award-winning children's novelist who has written over 100 books. So why do we love the ancient world? Well, for me, the ancient world is exotic and mysterious, and the languages are puzzles which, once unlocked, can bring me within touching distance of the likes of Homer, Euripides, and Plato. A bit like visiting an ancient site and touching the inscribed letters with your fingers. Indeed, one of my students who is a writer and teacher says, ancient Greek is a way to inhabit the past through language. So I thought I would ask my students why they loved ancient languages. And I received many stories about how they had fallen in love with the ancient world. Fascinating stories, some laugh out loud, all special and unique. Some had immediate and current reasons for learning, such as intellectual stimulation while being confined to home during the pandemic. Others told me about their lifelong journeys with ancient myths. I'll keep these stories anonymous, but here are some of them. An adult learner who took Latin as a throwaway third choice subject at university found that he enjoyed it so much that he changed his degree from English literature to classics. Now he is making final corrections to his master's degree, having presented his research at conferences in the UK and Europe, and all because he took Latin for fun. And interestingly, in addition, he has worked with the IRIS project, teaching beginners Latin to 10-year-old primary school children in deprived areas of Glasgow. Next, a student who is an award-winning children's novelist. He has had a lifelong love affair with the Homeric poems and has begun writing poetry again. Through Logue's Iliad adaptation, War Music, he was spurred on to read as many translations of the Iliad as he could find. When he encountered Peter Green's translation of the Iliad, the preface told how Green, at the age of almost 90, finally began to translate the book he had loved his whole very long life. And that was this student's inspiration. He says every old poet should try his hand at Homer. So at the age of 68, he says, if I give myself over to Greek and can get anywhere near reading Homer in his beautiful original and chisel out a few lines of real translation before I'm done, I will have spent my final years to honourable purpose. Another story from a high school student in the UK. He attended a school where Latin was not taught. So his parents organised a tutor, and 3 years later, Latin is his favourite subject. He loves the challenge of learning it and the links between Latin and other languages. Another adult learner, whose tweet is reproduced here, reading aloud her ancient Greek translation homework, she said, "Whose are those dead bodies?" To which her 10-year-old daughter responds, "Mummy, it worries me that you don't know the basics, like how are you? Do you want to go to the cinema?" This student adds that she believes her English vocabulary has practically doubled since she started learning Greek. And she loves that she is not only learning the language, but also, in her words, the history, culture, drama, philosophy, goddesses and magic. And she concludes with, what's not to love? Another student, a retired student, told me that stories adapted from the Greek and Roman myths were regularly included in reading books in primary school. This led to playing Greeks and Trojans at break time in the playground. He says he feels curiously at home with the ancient world, and it is part of who he is. Another adult student compares translating ancient Greek to the feeling of looking at an exhibit in a museum and knowing that a person as real as we are wore that jewellery or created that piece of pottery. While the words of the ancient language, they were written and spoken and perhaps performed and read. Another adult learner tells me about the family friends who had a boat named Bucephalus, which led to stories about Alexander the Great. And as part of his law degree, he studied Roman law at university and was amazed at how that was the cornerstone of Scots law and most European legal systems. One of my GCSE students enjoys the satisfaction of solving the puzzle of ancient Greek. She is particularly interested in how the ancient world has had an influence on us in the present. Her classmate developed an interest in ancient Greek when she read the Percy Jackson series. Even though she can't speak to anyone in classical Greek, for her it feels like peering into a hidden world. Being able to read and understand something written thousands of years ago is so special, and it makes her feel privileged and lucky. And finally, some of my favourite reasons. We can understand the Harry Potter spells. Greek is a mystical language that makes me feel cool. And finally, from Amber Taylor, one of the tutors, there's a certain kind of magic in being able to read words written thousands of years ago. My love of ancient Greek, I believe, was meant to be. It was written in the stars. When I was born, my dad wanted to call me Ariadne, but my mum refused, and they agreed on Helen. They chose Helen because they liked it rather than for any classical reason. But curiously, my dad was a newspaper reporter at the time, and his boss was called Mr. Troy. In addition to teaching Greek and organising courses, I am the convener of the Classical Association in Northern Ireland. And this role involves spreading the love of the ancient world by promoting our lectures, organising public readings and film screenings. We also hold an annual event for schools, which involves the participation of Legion Ireland, a group of Roman reenactors from Cork. And we have guest speakers, which have included the well-known writers and broadcasters, Professor Michael Scott and Cannae honorary patron Natalie Haynes. In this presentation, what I've been trying to elucidate is that classics, or the study of the language, literature and culture of ancient Greece and Rome, is for everyone, regardless of age or educational background. Learning the languages is a fulfilling activity, and reading texts in translation is like time travel and brings the reader into an immediate connection with the ancient past. What's not to love? Thank you.